All right, guys. So what we're going to be doing here, I mentioned that it's going to be like a micro assignment. All right. So this is going to be our first, almost like a design charrette foray into um, multiple color applications in one file. So it's going to be a slight deviation from the planar superimposition project, except this time we're actually going to do it with warped surfaces, and we're going to do it to integrate and blend into the landscape. And it really just requires a super simple form. And you're already used to a lot of the methodologies that we would need in order to generate that kind of form. So very simply put, it essentially just means that we're going to kind of blend surface, and I'll show you specifically how it should be done. We're going to blend surface down into the ground plane. Okay, does that make sense to you, at least conceptually so far? So we're going to have to start with a massing, and then you're going to use a grasshopper definition that I'm creating for you to actually do the planar superimposition. And I think that part you guys are really going to love. So let's start off here in the top view and just set what our ground plane is going to be. And we're going to pick something that's basically just a square city block. So we'll start with a rectangle. And we're going to start that off at 0, 0. And please make sure that you're working in feet before you do this, because for many reasons, just make sure you're working in feet. And in the opposite corner, we're going to do 200 feet by 200 feet. Should look a little something like this. Now, right off the bat, we're going to actually offset from the base plane. And once we actually finish up the massing, you'll understand a lot more why. But basically, that's going to give us a buffer zone beyond the building that is going to be completely flat, which essentially gives us that blend effect that we're looking for. So let's do an offset curve, not offset curve on surface, offset, just offset. And change your distance to something that's not overwhelming. So maybe somewhere in the range of, like, I don't know, 30 to 50 would probably be enough. I'm just going to do 40. And then offset this curve to the inside. Should look a little something like that. So why am I doing this, right? So basically, we need to actually have, and I mentioned that, like, this is going to be a grasshopper definition. It's a planar superimposition project. So in keeping with the idea of what we did with this planar superimposition project, the surfaces we're going to articulate are going to be quadrilaterals, in a way, warped quadrilaterals. It just means that it needs to have 4 sides, essentially. So in order to do that, and it doesn't matter if your lines start from here, from the corner in, or if you wanted to go midpoint to midpoint, there really are a number of ways that you can do it, but I'm going to start with corners and work my way in. Okay, and then here is the the more basic version of what it is I'm trying to do. Okay, so I want you guys to sort of understand this. Let me show you, I think, how do I want to phrase this? Well, let's do it this way, actually. Let's draw a line and just pick one of these inside corners, and then go into your right side view and hold shift and just draw a line that goes up. And you can make it as tall as you want. The tallness doesn't really matter all that much, although it'll be kind of easy to see what's going to happen here with something that's kind of smaller. Okay. So with that, you can let's see. Yeah, let's move it in, and the actual amount that you move it in doesn't matter, but I'm just going to use a margin of precisely the midpoint to the interior corner, just to kind of give it that interior push to kind of pull it off of where the curve is supposed to blend down. All right. And then the last thing I'm going to do is actually lift this thing up. So I'll click on that and type in 25 feet. So what is this doing? And right now we're going to be operating very symmetrically so that you understand what it is we're doing. The command blend curve. This is going to allow you to take three-dimensional geometry, right, that lives above your ground plane, or in some way is in some relationship to your ground plane, and all you do is click and click, and it'll blend that curve down, right? So what happens here is if you take that geometry, right, and you mirror it across the midpoint here, make sure you're holding shift, and then you select that side and you do the same thing, mirror it again, and put it on the other side, right? This is what you get. You get all four of these curves from the corner are now blending upward, right? So the coolest part about this now is I can take all of these curves, basically if you just do it this way, right? Window select, hold shift, window, 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 and then type in join. They all join into four open curves. See that? So now these are one joined curve. It's basically a polycurve at this point. You can do a loft. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hit enter, and you can make it a closed loft, and then hit preview, and this is what you get. Right? You get a smooth form that kind of blends everything down into the ground plane. Now this one is round, and don't be distracted by the fact that it's actually ugly. But let's do that loft again and go back into the same configuration here, closed loft, preview, and if you if you switch it to straight sections, that's what you get instead. Right? You get whatever object or form you have that's engaging the ground plane then connects to the ground plane. Okay, so this is how you start to blend some of that geometry in, and it's very, very similar to what we did what we did in the previous project, right, using blend surface. Now, what's really important here is that after you explode that, these are one item. Okay, so I mentioned that we're going to be operating on quadrilaterals, and I put quotes around that because it's not really technically a quadrilateral. It's more of like a four-sided warped plane in a way, right? So the key is that it has one line or boundary edge here, and then it has another line or boundary edge there. And even though that's made up of three separate linear segments, they are all tangent to one another. That's the most important part of this exercise. They're tangent, which means that it's going to read as one edge. Okay? All right, let me go back a little bit. I'm going to go back to before these are joined. All right. So now, what the operative question, I think, at this stage is, why are we doing this? Right? Why are we trying to blend this stupid little box down into this little surface here, right? Well, the important part that I'm trying to get to is that as you grow that geometry in a few different ways, you can basically just kind of create a building that, in essence, just grows directly out of the building itself. So regardless of whether or not it's actually a box, you can actually use a spline, and with project on, for instance, you can create a sort of profile right? You have this profile here. I'm going to move this to that location. Right, so you start off by creating a profile here, and then through just mapping a number of different profiles, you can get that geometry to then play into basically engage the body of the geometry itself. In fact, this is probably too extreme, so I'm going to modify this and soften it up a little bit. There we go. Yeah, cool. So that has like kind of a really extreme, almost looping, twisting thing. And I didn't hyper control this geometrically right now. I'm just sort of showing you something off the cuff. But there's no reason that this can't also be mirrored. And then the way that it engages the ground can be mimicked as well, right? So we can, let me mirror this the other way. Then I'm going to move that one down 12 feet. And I'm going to create another place for it to engage. Just something like that, nothing special. Right now this is free form and very structural. Okay, so it's really not meant to be anything, you know, hyper intense. But those can easily be lofted together. Did I do that wrong? Oh, hang on. Need to get the right order. Let's see, we need to probably flip these. Loft. Oh, hang on. So the top two are facing the right direction, the bottom ones are not. Alright, well this isn't behaving the way I need it to, so I'll just loft them separately. So I'll loft this, that's good. Loft this, that's good. Alright, so I mean this is super freeform, and you know there's really not all that much. It seems to be a very difficult thing to engage with, to basically engage with that, you know, base level. But when, and I'm gonna have to actually remove these. But basically, you can just take blend curve, right? And when you're in the side view, you just need to make sure that it's not dipping down below the ground plane. But you just blend curve everything together and make sure that you're using the same settings for pretty much everything. Flip 1, 2, oh, hang on. There you go. This to that. Right? Then you just need to join them all. So same thing, same process. You just go from there to there to there, there. No. Here we go. Join. Just select them all, actually. Four open curves, that's what you want. And then you can do your loft. So curve to loft would be this to that. That to that. And I need to flip one. Alright, so my form is a little too extreme. I'll clean it up, but that didn't work out well. Okay, well, barring the sides here being way too extreme, the idea really is that you're getting what you're getting is you're getting a blend that goes back down into the actual base itself. Okay, so that's the objective here. And most importantly, right here is the key. Okay, so if you look at this in the rendered view, which is this, or was that rendered view? Rendered viewport. Why is it still showing my lines? Turn them off. There we go. You're not my active view. Perspective. View. Well, anyway. The key here is that it basically blends out into a totally flat surface. Okay, so on that subject, I'm going to revise the model to be something that's more applicable to how you should actually be approaching it. I went a little too extreme here on this one, but what questions do you have right now? None?
I'm pretty lost on that.
Okay, well, I mean, well, I'll talk through it in a simpler version, I guess, is, you know, because visually it just didn't read well when it screwed up on the sides. Okay, any other questions? All right.